Jai-Ho Kim stood at the window of the big spaceship called Benevolence. He watched the stars move slowly past. He still could not believe he was here. He was the first human doctor ever to work on this alien ship. 5 years ago, no one on Earth knew aliens were real. Now, Earth was part of the Galactic Union. Jai-Ho touched the Union badge on his white doctor coat. He was far from home, but he was making history. The ship's medical room was nothing like hospitals on Earth. Here, machines did most of the work. Glowing screens showed body scans. Tiny robots smaller than a grain of rice could fix injuries inside a body without cutting the skin. Special pods could heal broken bones in minutes. Jai-Ho had never seen such amazing technology before coming to space. Still looking at the stars, Dr. Kim asked Dr. Pax. She was a Luvarian, one of the many alien species in the Union. She looked like a tall, thin person covered in short gray fur. Her eyes were large and purple. You humans always seem so, amazed by everything. Jai-Ho smiled. On Earth, we dreamed about meeting aliens for hundreds of years. Now I work with them every day. It's still hard to believe. Pax made a sound that was her species' way of laughing. The Union has had space travel for over 2,000 years. Your Earth technology is very basic to us, but we are glad to have humans join us. Jai-Ho knew what she really meant. Most aliens thought humans were interesting but primitive. Humans were the newest species in the Union, and many aliens looked down on them. But Jai-Ho was determined to prove humans had value. How do you like working with our medical systems? Pax asked. They're amazing, Jai-Ho said honestly, but I still keep my old medical bag with me. He pointed to the black bag he had brought from Earth. It had basic medical tools inside. Pax looked at the bag with interest. What do you keep in there? Just some basic tools. Bandages, medicine, things to stitch wounds, tools to set broken bones. Things we use on Earth. How strange, Pax said. Most Union doctors haven't touched a patient with their hands in hundreds of years. Our machines do everything. Before Jai-Ho could answer, a loud alarm sounded. A voice came from the ship's computer. Emergency alert. Shuttle accident in Bay 3. One Ilani female with multiple injuries. Medical team needed immediately. Jai-Ho grabbed his black bag automatically. Pax looked surprised but said nothing as they both ran toward the emergency area. They arrived just as flying robot stretchers brought in the injured alien. She was an Ilani, a species with blue skin. She looked almost human except for her color and her large almond-shaped eyes. This Ilani was young, maybe the equivalent of a human in her 20s. Her blue skin looked pale, almost white, with pain and shock. I am Nayoung, she said in a weak voice. I am. Exchange student from Elon Prime. Jai-Ho took out his Union medical scanner and moved it over her body. I'm Dr. Kim. What happened, Nayoung? My shuttle had engine problems, she managed to say through her pain. Emergency landing. Very rough. My safety belt broke. The scanner showed Jai-Ho the problem right away. Nayoung's right leg had a bad break. The bone had broken through the skin. Blood was coming from the wound, and the white bone end was visible. Jai-Ho had seen such injuries before on Earth after car accidents. We need to get her to the bone healing machine right away, Jai-Ho told the robot helpers. He gave Nayoung medicine for her pain. It would work quickly. Dr. Kiv, a senior alien doctor, came into the room. Kiv was a Turixi, a species with green skin and small tentacles on their face that moved when they talked. These tentacles were now moving quickly, showing Kiv was upset. The bone healers are not working, Kiv said. The power from the shuttle crash damaged our systems. The engineers say it will take at least 2 hours to fix. Jai-Ho looked at Nayoung's leg with concern. An open bone break like this couldn't wait 2 hours. The risk of infection was too high. The bone needed to be set now. I'll have to set the bone manually, Jai-Ho said. Kiv's face tentacles curled up in shock. Manually? You mean with your hands. That's not how we do medicine in the Union. We must wait for the machines. We don't have time to wait, Jai-Ho said firmly. I was trained to do this on Earth. Every doctor learns how. Na-young looked at Jai-Ho with wide, frightened eyes. You want to touch my bone? With your hands? Yes, Jai-Ho said gently. On Earth, doctors have been setting broken bones by hand for thousands of years. The pain medicine will help. I promise I know what I'm doing. More alien doctors and nurses had come into the room now. They all watched with a mix of horror and fascination. None of them had ever seen a doctor use their hands to fix a patient. For them, medicine meant programming a machine and letting it do the work. This is too risky, Kiv argued. We should wait for the machines to be fixed. Every minute we wait increases the chance of infection, Jai-Ho explained. The bone is exposed to air. Bacteria can get in. If infection sets in, she could lose the leg. Na-young's eyes grew even wider with fear. Dr. Pax had been watching silently. Now she stepped forward. Dr. Kim is right. I have studied old medical books. Before we had machines, all doctors used their hands. If Dr. Kim knows how to do this, we should let him try. Kiv's tentacles moved unhappily, but he stepped back. Very well. But I will record this for the medical board to review. Jai-Ho nodded and opened his black bag. He took out clean gloves and put them on. Then he took out tools to clean the wound, medicine to numb the area, and bandages. I'm going to clean the wound first, he told Na-young, speaking calmly. Then I'll give you more medicine so you won't feel pain in that area. After that, I'll move the bone back into place and bandage it. When the machines are working again, we can use them to finish healing the bone. Na-young watched his every move with nervous eyes. Does this hurt humans when you do it? The medicine prevents most of the pain, Jai-Ho assured her. Try to relax. Take deep breaths. The room was very quiet as Jai-Ho worked. He carefully cleaned the wound, removing dirt from the shuttle crash. Then he injected medicine around the break to numb the area. After checking that Na-young couldn't feel pain there, he prepared to set the bone. I need to pull your leg to get the bone back in place, he explained. You'll feel pressure, but it shouldn't hurt. Are you ready? Na-young looked at the alien doctors watching in silence. Then she looked back at Jai-Ho and his steady hands. Slowly, she nodded. Jai-Ho took a firm hold of her leg. He had done this before on Earth. He knew exactly how much force to use. With careful, steady pressure, he pulled the leg to align the broken bone. That's barbaric. Na-young screamed, more from fear than pain. The idea of someone touching her bone was shocking to her, but Jai-Ho kept working. He felt the bone move back into place with a small click. Quickly, he cleaned the wound again and applied a temporary splint from his bag. There, he said, stepping back. The bone is back in place. When the machines are working again, they can finish the healing. But now the risk of infection is much lower. The alien doctors moved closer, looking at his work with amazement. Kiv scanned the leg. The alignment is perfect, Kiv admitted, sounding surprised. Na-young was looking at her splinted leg with wonder. You fixed it, with just your hands. Jai-Ho smiled. Sometimes the old ways are still good. Dr. Pax was looking at Jai-Ho with new respect. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, humans have more to teach us than we realized. News about Jai-Ho's manual medical work spread fast on the big ship. By the next day, many aliens came to see the human doctor who fixed bones with his hands. Na-young was resting in the medical room. The pain medicine helped her sleep. When she woke up, she found Jai-Ho checking her leg. How do you feel today? Jai-Ho asked. Better, Na-young said. But it's still strange to think you touched my bone with your hands. She shivered a little at the thought. Jai-Ho smiled. On Earth, this is normal medicine. When I was learning to be a doctor, I had to practice setting bones many times. Na-young looked surprised. You practiced? On real people? First on models, Jai-Ho explained. Then we watched experienced doctors. Finally, we did it ourselves under their watch. Dr. Pax came into the room with a group of young alien doctors. They looked at Jai-Ho with great interest. Dr. Kim, Pax said, these are our medical students. They have never seen manual medicine before. Would you mind showing them what you did? Not on Nadam, of course. Just show the moves. Jai-Ho nodded. Of course. He took a model leg from his bag. All human doctors carried teaching tools. Jai-Ho showed the students how to hold the leg, how much force to use, and how to know when the bone was in the right place. The students watched with big eyes. One of them, a young Turixi with bright green skin, raised a tentacle to ask a question. But how do you know you won't make it worse, without a computer to guide you? Good question, Jai-Ho said. We use our knowledge of how bones work. We feel for the right position, and we practice a lot. Na-young watched from her bed. She seemed less afraid now and more curious. In my history classes, they told us Ilani doctors used to work with their hands too, she said. But that was thousands of years ago, before we joined the Union. No one does it anymore. Many species forget their old ways when new technology comes, Pax said. Perhaps that is not always wise. The ship's computer voice spoke suddenly. Alert! Union transport ship Harmony has sent emergency signal. Multiple injured from system failure. Arriving in 20 minutes. Pax looked worried. This is bad timing. Our healing machines are still not working. How many injured? Jai-Ho asked. The computer says 15 aliens of different species, Pax said. Some with serious injuries. Jai-Ho thought for a moment. I can help, but I'll need assistance. Are any of you willing to learn some basic manual medicine very quickly? The students looked at each other nervously. Then Na-young raised her hand from her bed. I will help, she said. I can't walk, but I can use my hands. One by one, the students also raised their hands or tentacles. Good, Jai-Ho said. Let's prepare. For the next 15 minutes, Jai-Ho gave a fast lesson in basic emergency care. He showed them how to stop bleeding, how to clean wounds, how to make splints for broken bones, and how to check for internal injuries. Remember, he said, our goal is to keep everyone stable until the machines are working again. We're not replacing technology. We're just filling in while it's down. When the injured aliens arrived, the medical room became very busy. Jai-Ho moved from patient to patient, showing his new helpers what to do. Some injuries were serious. 3 aliens had broken bones. 1 had a bad head injury. All needed help right away. Jai-Ho worked on the worst cases himself. He set a broken arm for a Turixi ship worker. He stopped heavy bleeding for a Luverian engineer. He carefully cleaned and bandaged burns on a species he had never seen before. Dr. Kiv watched from the side. He still didn't like the idea of touching patients, but even he could see that Jai-Ho's methods were working. Na-young sat on a wheeled chair, moving from bed to bed. She couldn't walk with her broken leg, but she could clean wounds and apply bandages. She learned quickly. You have good hands for this, Jai-Ho told her. Na-young smiled. Maybe it's in my blood. My great-grandmother was a healer on Elan Prime before we got Union technology. After 2 hours of hard work, all the patients were stable. Some were even well enough to thank their doctors. The medical students looked tired but proud. Dr. Pax came to Jai-Ho with good news. The engineers have fixed the healing machines. They should be working now. Excellent, Jai-Ho said. Let's move the patients there one by one, starting with the most serious cases. As the patients moved to the healing machines, Na-young stayed behind with Jai-Ho. Why do humans still learn the old ways? She asked. Your planet has had space travel for over 50 years. You must have good medical machines too. Jai-Ho nodded. We do have advanced technology, but humans believe in backups. What happens if the power fails? What happens if a computer breaks? What happens if you're somewhere with no machines? You need to know how to help people with just your hands and basic tools. Na-Young thought about this. That makes sense. On my home planet, we depend completely on machines now. If they stopped working, we wouldn't know what to do. Exactly, Jai-Ho said. Technology is wonderful, but it can fail. Hands and knowledge don't need power to work. Dr. Pax returned. All injured are in the healing machines now. They should recover fully. She looked at Jai-Ho with new respect. Without your help, some might have died waiting for our systems to be fixed. I'm just glad I could help, Jai-Ho said. Dr. Kim, Na-Young said suddenly, would you teach me more about manual medicine? I want to learn everything you know. Jai-Ho looked surprised. Are you sure? Yesterday you thought it was barbaric. Na-Young laughed. It still looks strange to me, but I see now that it works, and if I ever end up somewhere without machines, I want to be able to help. Dr. Pax nodded. I think we all could learn something from human medicine. Dr. Kim, would you consider starting a teaching program on this ship? Jai-Ho smiled widely. Maybe humans had more to offer the Galactic Union than anyone had thought. I would be happy to, he said. Na-Young clapped her hands. When can we start? Well, Jai-Ho said, looking at her splinted leg. First, let's get you to a healing machine and fix that leg properly. Then your first lesson can be how to make a better splint than I did yesterday. For the first time since her accident, Na-Young laughed. That's barbaric. Na-Young screamed as Jai-Ho gripped her leg, despite the local anesthetic numbing the pain. The cultural shock of watching someone physically manipulate her body was more disturbing to her than any discomfort. The assembled alien medical staff flinched collectively. Several recording devices captured the moment. The first documented manual bone-setting procedure aboard a Union vessel in over 3 centuries. With practiced hands, Jai-Ho applied steady traction, feeling the bone fragments align beneath his fingers. There was a subtle click as the bone slipped back into place. Jai-Ho worked quickly, cleaning the wound again and applying a temporary splint with materials from his personal medical kit. There, he said, stepping back. The bone is realigned. Once the bone knitter is operational, it will heal much faster now that everything is in the correct position. Na-Young stared at her splinted leg with a mixture of horror and fascination. You actually touched my bone. With your hands. I did, Jai-Ho confirmed. And now it's properly aligned. Dr. Kiv approached cautiously, scanning the leg with a handheld diagnostic tool. His tentacles twitched, and what Jai-Ho had learned was a sign of surprise. The alignment is perfect, Kiv admitted reluctantly. I would not have believed it possible without computer guidance. Dr. Pax moved closer, her aged eyes studying Jai-Ho with new interest. In my historical research, I've read accounts of ancient medical practices, but I've never witnessed them in person. Remarkable. As the initial shock wore off, the medical staff began peppering Jai-Ho with questions. How had he learned such techniques? How could he know the correct amount of force to apply? Why did humans still teach such primitive methods? Jai-Ho answered patiently, explaining how manual medical skills were still considered essential training on Earth, even as technology advanced. Technology can fail, he explained, gesturing to the offline bone knitters. When it does, you need alternatives. Na-Young's color had improved, and she was watching Jai-Ho with growing interest. On Elan Prime, our history teaches that before joining the Union, our healers used hands to treat patients, but those practices were abandoned generations ago. No living Ilani would know how to do what you just did. That's true for most Union species, Dr. Pax added. We've become so reliant on automated systems that manual skills have atrophied. Perhaps there's wisdom in the human approach of maintaining traditional knowledge alongside technological advancement. As the conversation continued, emergency lights flashed, and the ship's AI announced, "Attention medical staff. Multiple casualties incoming. Shuttle accident in Bay 5. Preliminary reports indicate 15 injured, various species. Dr. Kiv's tentacles curled in alarm. With the bone knitters and other systems offline, we'll be severely limited in our treatment options. All eyes turned to Jaiho. Dr. Kim, Pax said formally, would you be willing to demonstrate more of your manual medical techniques, and perhaps instruct those of us willing to learn? Jaiho nodded, already gathering supplies. Of course. That's why I'm here. As they hurried to prepare for the incoming casualties, Na-young called out to Jaiho. Dr. Kim, when this is over, would you teach me? Our ancient texts speak of Ilani healing hands. I'd like to reclaim that knowledge. Jaiho smiled. I'd be honored. 6 months after the shuttle accident, the medical bay of the Benevolence looked remarkably different. Most obvious was the new Manual Intervention Training Center, established in what had previously been a storage area for rarely used backup systems. Jaiho stood watching as Na-young, now fully recovered, and his most dedicated student, demonstrated proper splinting technique to a group of mixed-species medical personnel. Her movements were confident, her hands steady. Remember, she was saying, different anatomies require different approaches. What works for an Ilani limb won't necessarily work for a Tarixi appendage. Jaiho smiled. Na-young had not only embraced manual medical techniques, she had become their most passionate advocate throughout the Union fleet. Dr. Pax joined Jaiho, her aged face, creased in what he had learned was a Luverian smile. The High Medical Council has reviewed our reports, she said quietly. They've approved mandatory manual medical training for all Union medical personnel. That's excellent news, Jaiho replied, genuinely pleased. Not to replace automated systems, but as a complement to them. Indeed, the Council was particularly impressed by how your techniques saved lives during that mass casualty event. Pax's ears twitched in amusement. Though some traditionalists still find it difficult to accept that touching patients can be beneficial. Across the room, Dr. Kiv was awkwardly attempting to wrap a bandage with his tentacles, his initial disgust at manual techniques now replaced by determined concentration. The Union has advanced so far technologically that we forgot the basics, Pax continued. It took humans to remind us that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most reliable. Na-young finished her demonstration and approached them, her blue skin flushed with enthusiasm. Dr. Kim, I've been contacted by the Ilani Medical Academy. They want me to help establish a program to revive our traditional healing practices. Her eyes shimmered with excitement. Our historians have located ancient texts describing manual medical techniques dating back thousands of years. Techniques our people abandoned when we joined the Union. Cultural exchange at its finest, Jaiho said. Your ancestors would be proud. It's not just the Ilani, Pax added. Several Union species are rediscovering their pre-technology medical traditions. It's become something of a movement. As they spoke, the ship's AI announced another incoming emergency, a Union diplomatic vessel with engine trouble, and several injured crew members. Na-young straightened, suddenly professional. I'll prepare the manual trauma kits, just in case. As she hurried away, Pax turned to Jaiho. You know, when humans first joined the Union, many thought you had nothing to contribute. Your technology was centuries behind ours, your interstellar presence minimal. Jaiho nodded, having heard such sentiments many times. But now I understand why the Council of Elders voted to admit Earth despite those limitations. Pax continued. Humans don't just adapt to new situations. You maintain connections to your past, even as you move forward. That balance is something many Union species have lost. The medical bay doors slid open as the first patients arrived. Jaiho and Pax moved to assist, falling into the rhythm they had developed over months of working together. Later, after the emergency had passed and the injured were resting comfortably, Jaiho found Na-young in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Thinking about home, he asked, joining her. Actually, I was thinking about your home, she replied. About Earth. I've requested a transfer to your planet's medical exchange program. Jaiho raised his eyebrows in surprise. Why? He asked. Nayoung turned to him, her expression earnest. Because I want to understand how your people balance the old and the new so effectively. And she hesitated. Because I want to see the world that produced people who aren't afraid to set a broken bone with their bare hands when necessary. Jaiho laughed. Most humans would still find that pretty barbaric, you know. We prefer the high-tech approach when available. But you're willing to do what needs to be done, however it needs to be done, Nayoung replied. That's what makes humans different. That's what makes humans human. As they stood together watching the stars, Jaiho reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He had come aboard the Benevolence hoping to learn alien medical technology. Instead, he had ended up teaching the aliens about human resilience and adaptability. Sometimes the oldest knowledge was the most valuable, a lesson both humans and aliens were learning together, one manually reset bone at a time.